Computer Programming for Kids, Step 6. Prevent the user from moving on without having made a choice. In our app that guesses people's age or age range, we want to force them to make a selection before moving on to the next question. We can do this by disabling the next button until a selection is made. So these are the things we will do to accomplish that. Each time a new set of options is displayed, we will disable the next button. But then when and how will we then enable it when we should allow it to be clicked again? We will watch in code for the selection of one of the radio button items. When that occurs, we will enable the next button. Simple as that. So here's the code to do it. Set the next button's enable property to false by adding this code to the start of the load next batch block of code after sequence ++. And the code is button1.enabled equals false, semicolon. The start of that code should now look like this. The new code is bolded and it shows the code for the load next batch method up to that point. You can tell visually that the next button is disabled because it's grayed out, and there's a screenshot which you will see if you subscribe to the newsletter. You get all the screenshots and all the code. But if it's never enabled again, we will not be able to use it to move on to the next set of questions. So we also need to add code to re-enable it. This we will do by listening to the radio button controls. To do this, follow these steps. 1. In the designer, highlight the first radio button by clicking on it. Radio button 1 should look like this after clicking it, and there's a screenshot that shows what it should look like. 2. Move to the events part of the property pane in the lower right corner of Visual Studio by clicking the lightning icon on it, which is rectangled in the screenshot below. This will show you which events are available to write code for. The event we want is the one that is highlighted by default, checked changed. The checked changed event fires when a change is made to the radio button by it being clicked on. And it shows a screenshot of that event. And step 3 is double click to the right of the checked changed event in the area rectangled above. This should open up the following code in the Form 1 design file. And it shows that event handler code ready for you to add code to it. 4. Write the following code in it. The new code is bolded, which sets the button 1's enabled property to true, or it sets it to checked. In other words, the button is enabled if the radio button is checked, has been checked. Step 5. Rather than write the same code in the other 2 radio buttons, hook up the other radio buttons to this code we just wrote so that they use this same code for their checked changed events too. Do that by selecting the other 2 radio buttons in turn, then selecting the drop-down for their checked changed event in the Properties pane, and finally select the one we just wrote, which is rectangled below in the screenshot. Now all 3 radio buttons will use that same code. No matter which radio button is selected, it will turn on or re-enable the next button so that it can be clicked. There is one other thing that we need to do. The group of radio buttons need to all be set to unchecked each time a new set of options displays. We handle that this way. 1. In the designer, set the value of at least the first radio button's auto check property to false, rectangled below in the screenshot. 2. In code, set the values for all the radio buttons back to true when the form is created. By default, without us having written it ourselves, that code is simply and it shows what that code is by default. Change it to the following. The new code is bolded, and it shows that same code but with 3 lines of code added, setting the radio button's auto check property to true. 3. Set the checked property for all radio buttons to false in the load next batch code. The new code is bolded. And the code is shown with the check property for all the radio buttons being set to false. It should now work fine. In the next step, we will calculate the final score, our guess, of the user's age range, and add something visual to display the result to the user.